Hello everybody and welcome again to Nathan Unshuffled, and I've got a special show here for you guys. It's a new concept that I've come up with. I've seen other YouTubers kind of do similar things to this, so it's not a totally original idea by any stretch. But I thought as I reviewed some of these bigger albums by some of these artists that I totally love, that it would be fun to go back through their catalog and kind of rank their albums and kind of give my impressions of what albums I prefer from the band, what are my favorites. And I want to give a big disclaimer before I do this, because I've talked before in other videos and in comments that this is a place of positivity. I'm not going to talk negatively about anything. I love all these albums. Just because one might be ranked lower than another doesn't mean that I don't like the lower ranked albums. I love all these albums. I'm ordering them in terms of my own personal preference. And this isn't an objective list. This is very subjective, just to my opinion and to the music that I enjoy. So I'm sure your opinion will differ from what I'm going to talk about. But I just thought it would be of interest to those out there who are fans of the band or who are wanting to check out Frost, which is the band that we're covering now, want to check out their albums. And maybe this is a cool way to kind of get a little taster of each of their albums and what they're all about. So I'm going to try to keep it fairly brief, talk about each album very briefly and just give my general impressions and kind of give my justifications for why I ranked it how I did. And I'm putting the new album that I just reviewed, Day and Age, into this list. Of course, it's early days with the new album. It came out very recently and I haven't heard it a whole ton of times, but I thought it would be fun anyways to kind of see in my at least early impressions where I think it should rank. And it may change over time based on my feelings. Sometimes albums kind of grow on me over time. Sometimes I'm not as excited about them later on. It initially excites me and then it kind of falls away a little bit in my interest. But generally I think my first impressions are fairly accurate in most cases, so I thought this would be a fair exercise. And I also want to point out that I'm going to have a playlist created in Spotify for my favorite Frost tracks, kind of a quote-unquote best of Frost list that I thought would be cool to accompany this video. So hopefully you will check that out. The link will be, of course, in the description, and so I'll definitely have that available for those who may want to check out some of my Spotify playlists, including the one for Frost that I plan to start for this show. So let's get into the rankings. So just also I wanted to mention that I'm only doing studio albums, and so there may be some wonkiness to certain bands and certain things because a lot of bands have certain live albums or EPs or albums that are kind of mixture of new tracks and live tracks and things like that. So there could be some gray area. I'm going to stick with mainly the main studio albums, and that's really where my focus will lie. So you may be like, well, where's that album that I like? Well, it probably didn't technically count as a studio album in my mind for various reasons. But if there's one that's notable, I may mention it as kind of almost an honorable mentions, which I'll do now for Frost. They just came out with an EP last year called Others, which I totally adore. I think it's fantastic and ranks amongst their best material. I totally love it, and I've been listening to it a lot over the past year. I love Eat is a special track that I think is so creative. It has all these like samples of just human sounds, different sounds with the mouth and with, it's hard to describe, but it's a track that you need to hear because it's so unique and clever. And I'll definitely put it on my Frost playlist. It's just so cleverly done. I love Clouda is just one of my favorites as well. Just super pristine sound. I just absolutely adore that track. But the whole EP is just fantastic and really gave a great teaser for music to come. I think it's pretty unique in their catalog. It's kind of this collection of tracks that don't quite fit in the mix of these other albums, but kind of fit together as almost this misfit group of tracks that are really excellent and different and creative and modern sounding. So I really appreciate that EP and recommend it, even though it doesn't technically make my rankings, only because it's an EP and not a full-length studio album. Another honorable mention, an album that I got that I have in my collection, is this one, Philadelphia Experiment. This is a live album, so that's why it didn't count on the list, but definitely recommended. A lot of strong playing on this. The band is on fire, and it features one of my favorite Frost tracks as kind of a bonus track. The Dividing Line is a studio track on here that's just this like mini epic that goes in so many different wild, crazy directions. It just is a definite recommendation. I absolutely adore it. I think it's fantastic. And so please check this out as well. Even though it doesn't technically make the rankings because it's not a studio album, I think it deserves a spot of a mention, because if only just because of the Dividing Line, which I absolutely think is top tier Frost music. So totally excellent. All right, so now we get into the actual rankings. And this was difficult because I really love all these albums, so don't take it the wrong way. They're razor thin margins here. They're very close together. But this is kind of, I've been listening to these albums the past few weeks, and I've really been trying to decide how I feel about them and where they would sit in my rankings. So this is kind of based on my enjoyment of them at this current moment in time. This is basically how I felt. Number 4 is this one, Experiments in Mass Appeal. Really loved this, especially when it came out. A fantastic album. What was really interesting to me is they took a very different tactic from Million Town, which was such a big, debut that had a lot of long, epic tracks to it. This kind of focuses more on shorter, punchier tracks, in my opinion. It really hits hard. Each track has something really interesting to put into the mix. They kind of experiment with this kind of light and shade, this light kind of softer sections, and then it really bursts into this heavy, like over the top section, and there's these like huge dynamics. It goes from like volume level 1 to volume level 10 in like one instant, and it can be a little bit jarring on certain listens, and sometimes when my music is just on shuffle and one of these tracks comes up, it's just like a shocking, like, whoa, that just happened. It just like exploded there. I really love the tracks Dear Dead Days and Falling Down, just this kind of fantastic 1-2 punch of greatness. I really love this album. I think even though it's ranked bottom, it's still incredible. It just doesn't quite reach the proggy heights of some of their other works. That I kind of like the expansive nature of some of their longer form tracks, and I think that's why it sits at the bottom of my ranking, but still I hold it in high regard. It came out when I was in college, and I listened to it very frequently as I was driving around, as I was walking around. It was a constant companion in those days back in 2008 when it came out. So definitely a recommendation, and I really like that one. So even though it's ranked low, it's still an incredible album, which shows the quality of Frost in general. All right, so ranked at number 3 is actually the new album. Day and Age that I've just recently reviewed. I recommend highly to check out my review of it. I just really loved the album, and I'm still uncovering. There's a lot to unpack in it. There's a lot of sonic, nuances and little sounds and things to pick out in the mix, so it may rise up a step or two. This album is super close to me in the ranking to the next album I'll talk about, but just really excellent album altogether. I think it's really a cohesive package. It's this, I think it's about 50 minutes long, so it's not overly long, but they're able to, go through a lot of different moods and variety even throughout the 53-minute length. It's fantastic. I love the title track, Day and Age. I talked all about it in my review, so I recommend you check that out if you want more thoughts on the album. But really a lot going on in all of these tracks. I really absolutely really liked this album. I love the poppiness of Island Life, but also the heaviness and darkness of other tracks. like Repeat to Fade, the closer, which is just really expansive. And there's just a lot here, and it has a very cohesive theme, and it just really works well together as a complete album. So that is my number 3, is Day and Age. And so number 2 is Frost's Falling Satellites, which I have on the board here. Really fantastic record. Love everything about this one. It's surprised me. I thought this would probably rank lowest when I first set upon ranking these albums, because when it came out, I don't know if I wasn't in the right mood or if I was expecting something different, but it didn't really hit me the way I expected initially. You know, it wasn't something that I really grasped and held on to, but listening to it again now, I'm blown away by this album. I think it's really fantastic and shows it's kind of a perfect blend of the first 2 albums that they did. It has some of these longer, expansive sections, especially throughout the final kind of section, where it's almost like several songs that fit together into one piece, but broken into different movements. And it goes through so many different moods and variety and instrumental fireworks and all this different stuff. It kind of harkens back to Milliontown and the sounds of those early album, and it's really well crafted. But there's also shorter, kind of almost more poppier tracks as well, kind of to balance out the mix. John Mitchell has a lot of showcase on vocals on some of these shorter tracks. Just fantastic record. Really like this, and it's even better than I remember it being. So I hope you guys will check this out. It came out not too long ago. It came out in 2016 after quite a break from the Experiments in Mass Appeal that came out in 2008. So kind of an 8-year span. I think maybe that's why there was a lot of high expectations, because it had been such a long period that maybe some people were disappointed. But listening to it again now, I also want to highlight Tower Block. I meant to talk about Tower Block, which is such a unique track that takes this like EDM, electronica kind of inspired sound, these kind of glitchy sections, dubstep almost, but fits it into this progressive rock piece that makes sense to me in a crazy way and brings kind of this progressive spirit into a modern sound. And it's really a great mixture of things. So highly recommend this. This is my second favorite Frost album upon this recent listen, and I didn't expect that. So definitely surprised me and has been an exciting thing to get into. And finally, at number 1, it's probably the obvious choice, but it's undeniable. This has to be number 1 in my opinion, and it is their first album, Milliontown. Just groundbreaking prog album for the modern era. I think this should stand up as one of the hallmarks of modern prog music. It really revolutionized modern progressive rock to me when I first heard it way back when. It just really blew me out of the water. It came out in 2006 and just really changed the musical landscape in my view. You know, it brought in this modern, poppier technicality and poppier sensibility. It brought this modern production sheen to this kind of progressive rock style, and it really was cool to me. You know, I was into bands like Flower Kings and Spockspirit that were very retro, you know, throwbacks kind of to the older era of prog, but this to me is what solidified that prog can be brought into the newer age and can sound really pristine and fantastic and fit in the modern soundscapes. You know, I really appreciate what they did here. It starts with Hyperventilate, which is an excellent instrumental that kind of sets the stage, then moves to a few shorter tracks that really hit hard. And the final 2 tracks, kind of the epic pieces of the album, are just all-time classics to me. Blacklight Machine is just excellent. Some great soloing, some great playing. It's off the charts. What they do here, it's just super fun to listen to. I always enjoy it. And Milliontown is just a next level epic that just goes through so many moods, so much variety, so many things going on in the mix. Just beautiful keyboard playing and beautiful singing, and just it goes through so many movements and different sections, and it's sublime. One of the best modern progressive epics of all time. So definitely, if you're going to check out any Frost, that's the one to check out first, is their first album, Milliontown. Fantastic record, sounds fantastic, still sounds just as excellent in production as it did back when it was released. Just really next level, and showed a new level of modern production in prog music. So I appreciate that and feel that it's a seminal prog release from the modern age. So that's my ranking of Frost albums, just as a quick recap. Number 4 was Experiments in Mass Appeal. Number 3 was the new album Day and Age. Number 2 was Falling Satellites. And number 1, Milliontown. That to me is my ranking of their catalog. Tell me what you think. What's your ranking of their albums in the comments? Please let me know. You may have a slightly different ordering. Check out my playlist in Spotify of my favorite Frost tracks. Definitely going to feature some of these songs that I mentioned and talked about. So if you want a little bit of a taster of those, please check that list out and play the music. You know, I want to encourage people to go out and check out this music and listen to these songs in full as they're meant to be heard, and support the artists if you really like what you hear, and buy their albums on whatever platform you would like. And so thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this feature. There should be several more of these type features in the future, so hopefully it's a format you guys enjoy. As I said, I love all these albums, so don't get caught up on what's ranked low. That doesn't mean it's the worst. It just means I prefer other albums a little bit more, but they're all excellent and they all deserve a high spot on this list. So thank you for watching, and once again, enjoy the music.